Okay, we're going to get started now. Good morning again. This is Adam Goldstein, Chief Business Officer at the Federal Home Loan Bank of New York. We welcome you to today's webinar, an introduction to the new 0% interest rate business development advance, and we thank you very much for your time. The balance of the last 20 months, believe it or not, it's hard to believe it's been 20 months, but your Federal Home Loan Bank has been providing a series of economic stimulus packages to support you. And today, we're going to discuss our newest tool in the toolbox. Essentially, after dividend, we're actually paying you to lend into your community. So before we get into the crux of the presentation with Tom Citino and Jen Alberto, I just want to cover two quick items to kind of tee this up. The first is the idea, and the second is the funding of this program. So let's start with the idea. The idea was actually developed over lunch with a true community lender down in Vineland, New Jersey, Dave Hanrahan. He had taken me out to visit some of the local businesses. We sat down over lunch. It was one of those diners where you have the kind of advertisements of all the local businesses as your placemat. And he kind of flipped it over and said, here's what we need. And took us a little bit to get our arms around the need across the entire district, not just down in Vineland, New Jersey, but we came up with a program that we felt could benefit all members and would be super easy to use and would be valuable even in an environment where all of our members are very flush with cash given all the liquidity in the system. So a shout out to Dave Hanrahan. Thank you very much for generating the idea with me and for all the folks at the bank that helped to bring it to fruition. Now on the funding side of it, this is kind of interesting. The Home Loan Bank has a long history of providing these types of programs, although this one certainly is different. And that history, at least most recently, started in 1990 when the home loan banks began setting aside funding for our AHP program, the Affordable Housing Program, which, looking at the list of folks on this call, some of you are involved in. And then a little bit later on, what we had called the First Home Club Program, which we now call Home Buyer Dream Program. Those are set-aside programs where we take 10% of our income in a given year and distribute those funds the following year to our members for housing. And the companion to that was something called the Community Investment Program, which really was a subsidized advance where members are borrowing essentially at our cost of funds. Now that was humming along until Superstorm Sandy, and around that time, the Community Investment Advance really exploded, and the growth got up to like $7 billion and change, and lots of members were using it to the tune of 80, 90 members. And it became such a heavily used advance from a financial engineering perspective. We had to sit down and say, geez, that's really could get to a point where it becomes dilutive to the dividend, which we all know is so meaningful to you. And we also knew that there were some other things that we wanted to do in our area to support you and to support our mission. And we developed something called a CSA budget, community support activity. Anyone that's involved in ESG or might be involved in some of the social programs, we have a really good model that we'd be happy to talk to you offline about. And basically what we did was ring fence the activities based on our projections of the business plan. So we figure out what our year income is going to be. We look at all the things that we need to do as a federal home loan bank in consideration for retained earnings and your dividends and paying the bills to run the bank. And then we set aside community support budget money. And then we began diversifying the usage of that money a little bit away from the CI advance and into other programs based on what was happening in our district. And our district, as a reminder, is New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And obviously these weather anomalies are occurring much more frequently. We, down in Puerto Rico, were dealt some blows with Irma and Maria, and earthquakes and landslides and lots of issues down there that we were supporting our members through home ownership recovery grants and the small business recovery grants. And fast forward to last March 2020, when COVID hit, we reignited that small business recovery grant program, which was generated first for aid in Puerto Rico. And then we've been doing a lot there, obviously, last year. And this year, we just completed another round of small business recovery grants of $3 million. It sold out in about 7-8 minutes, and we think we're going to see something similar on this BDA advance. So the community support activity budget allows us to do some of these social programs for weather anomalies or small businesses or charitable contributions for a variety of different factors. And that has really helped us guide the activities that help us fulfill our mission. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And if you'll see on the next slide that we'll bring up, which talks about the Federal Home Loan Bank of New York mission, I think it's coming up on your screen in a second. When we get there, you'll see it. It starts on the left side. If we can go one slide forward. I'm not seeing it on my slide yet. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so on the left side, you see our mission there. And on the right side, it's really what I've been speaking about. So if you look at the circle of life here, on the green arrow, the bank does very well, which I hope you're all proud of. We're proud that you're all members, and we try to do our best to support you in a variety of diverse ways, this being one of them. With the strong financials that we produce, we are able to maintain our AAA rating, at least by Moody's, access to capital markets using our GSE status and get you money cheaply. We extend those products and services and programs to you, our members. We take 10% of our earnings, as I mentioned earlier, for the Affordable Housing Program and Home Buyer Dream Program. That enables the Home Loan Bank to pay competitive dividends, so on and so forth, and as the circle goes. So this is just another way that we're able to help you, help fulfill our mission, and do good in our communities by partnering with you. So as we go to the next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Titino, my friend, Vice President of Member Relations, who's going to start going through some of the mechanics, and we'll get into this new program for you. Tom, take it away.
Thanks, Adam. Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. So the next slide talks about is an overview of the business development advance. Adam mentioned how we got to this point, but the business development advance, as many of you may already know, is an advance that you could execute at 0%. But there's certain mechanics associated with this I'll get into. But the structure of the business development advance is a structure where it's subsidized funding in the form of interest rate credits. And those interest rate credits will be used by the member to buy the interest cost of the business development advance to 0%. We have $3 million of allocation towards this program in the form of interest rate credits, and each member will have a maximum allocation of $50,000. Now, $50,000 can buy down decent-sized advances to 0%. I looked at a couple of tenors. The minimum tenor is 1 year, maximum is 5. I looked at the 1 to 3 year tenors based off of yesterday's rates. 1 year, the $50,000 can buy $3.4 million of a 1 year advance to 0%, a 2 year advance of $2 million, or a 3 year advance of $1.625 million. So the $50,000 will bring all those tenors of those amounts down to 0%. And we'll get into the mechanics in a little more detail in a slide or two. Okay, so as many of you already know, we have had reservations already submitted today. The official rollout date was today, November 4th, but it's a first come, first served basis. Members have to submit a reservation request under this program, and your reservations will be approved on a first come, first served basis, as long as there's funds available. There's been a lot of interest, so we were encouraged folks to get your reservations in pretty early, today or tomorrow, or in a couple of days. So the funds will be available until either the $3 million allocation is exhausted or until December 31st, whichever occurs earlier. So December 31st is the end date of this program. So the reservation would have to be submitted. The small businesses would have to be qualified and submitted for our review, and then the advance would have to be submitted by December 31st. And we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. So the business development advance proceeds will be used to fund loans to qualified small businesses. So the qualification of a small business they would just have to meet the definition of a small business as defined by the SBA. The SBA, it does not have to be a small business SBA backed loan. It just has to meet, the small business would just have to meet the definition of a small business as defined by the SBA. The proceeds of the advance would have to be passed along to the small business at an advantageous rate, no more than 3% or 300 basis points over the cost of the advance. So the cost of the advance would be 0%. So the small business would benefit by getting an advantageous rate. I'm getting a little feedback. All right, so the BDA funding will be transacted in the same manner as a traditional advance. So you'd submit the qualified small business and then let us know about the loan and the rate. We'd approve you. Then you'd get credit at our member services desk to transact the BDA, or the business development advance. You would have to purchase the requisite capital stock as well. It would have to be collateralized. With respect to the requisite capital stock, that adds additional economic lift to the program. So when you execute an advance that you purchase the coupon down to 0, you're still getting a dividend on that capital stock, which is historically a high-yielding investment, the home loan bank stock. When you do the math on that, currently, based off a 4% dividend, that would offset the advance by an additional 18 basis points. So essentially, you'd be borrowing at a negative rate. You'd be borrowing at negative 18 basis points when you factor in the impact of the dividend from the capital stock. So that's an important consideration as well, or important thing to keep in mind. And like I had mentioned, the program officially launched today. We already have some reservations, and I thank you for those members who started working expeditiously to get your allocation. So we encourage other members who are interested to put in their reservation as well. Moving on to the next slide. So Adam had mentioned this already, pretty much. The business development advance was developed to help out small businesses. This has been years in the works. We were formulating this concept many years ago, but right now we're rolling it out, especially in light of the COVID crisis and some of the financial hardships that have fell on small businesses. We feel that this program would be useful to small businesses right now. Also, it's a good story for members. If you're out there and marketing this program, you have a small business that you have targeted, they could offer a competitive advantage or a competitive rate when you're bidding for that small business loan. You know, it's a good story in the community, and also small businesses would really appreciate it. Your customers would appreciate it, and it elevates your image when marketing this to new customers. And then, of course, it ensures a reasonable spread for members' small business lending activities. You'll be making 300 basis points on this, 300 plus basis points on this business development advance. So let's get into the attributes in a little more detail on the next slide. Some of these I've already mentioned before. Program cap of $3 million that we've allocated to this, and that's for this year. And this is our first introduction to the BDA. We may do this again in the future, but right now the program is $3 million. $50,000 in subsidized interest rate credits per member, and then a minimum term of 1 year and a maximum term of 5 years. The eligible advance types, we're just using plain vanilla fixed rate bullet advances for this program. Straightforward, easy to understand. It's also, from a managing operational perspective on our side, it's easiest to manage. And then once the funding is exhausted, the program will end, or by December 31st, whichever comes first. So let's go to the next slide. Eligibility. Some of these items I've already spoke about. a qualified small business, so you've targeted a small business. It has to meet the definition of small business as defined by the Small Business Association. And it's pretty simple, actually. We have a link that we'd be happy to share with you on the SBA site. There's the NAIC codes. You put in, it's very simple. You put in the NAIC code associated with the small business that you're lending to. You put in the amount of employees, and then it tells you the asset size and the number of employees that would meet the definition of a small business. So very simple and straightforward to qualify. The rate markup, like I had mentioned, the rate on the loan to the small business cannot exceed 3% or 300 basis points over the advance cost, which is 0. The loans must be submitted and the BDA must be executed prior to year end of 2021. I know there was it's a tight timeline, but the way things fell into place, we have the budget for this year, and then next year's a different story. We'll figure that out in the future. But right now, this round closes at year end 2021. The loans, and we'll get into it in a second or two, loans are going to have to be submitted via a new portal that we have set up. But the loans can be submitted individually or pooled together for qualification of the program if you have many loans that you're submitting. And then the members must certify the loans that they meet the qualifications and rate markup criteria. So the next slide illustrates just how the interest rates credits work. So the mechanics are that the member has, in this scenario, it's a $500,000 loan, a 3-year loan to a small business. So the member would extend the loan to the small business, and then the small business would pay interest to the member. The interest cannot exceed 300 basis points over the loan of 3%. So the member would provide the evidence of the small business loan to us, and then we grant the $500,000 advance to the member. So in this case, to make it simple, and this was done a couple of weeks ago, a 3-year advance for this $500,000 loan, 3-year advance at 1%. The market's moved away from us a little bit. It's really at 1.07% as of yesterday. But let's, for argument's sake, 1%, easy round numbers. You have a $500,000 loan, 1% advance. You'll be paying $5,000 a year on this advance. For 3 years, it would be a $15,000 interest expense on this $500,000 loan over the course of 3 years. So if you get a $50,000 interest rate credit allocation, you have $15,000 of credits that you could use to pay off the interest on this. So yeah, that brings this advance down to 0%. You'd get the credits on a monthly basis spread out over every interest payment. So as every interest payment occurred, it would be 0 because you'd get the credits allocated to you. And then you'd have $35,000 of remaining credits for other loans that you could execute. So pretty simple, easy to understand, I think. But if you have some more questions, please, you could input your questions in the chat box or in the question box on your screen, and then we'll have the Q&A at the end to either clarify this or any other concept in greater detail. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Alberto, a Program Administration Manager in our Affordable Housing Program team, and she'll get into the operational aspects of the program. So Jennifer, it's all yours.
Thank you, Tom, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. As Tom mentioned, I'm going to walk everyone through the operations of the BDA. So this will include the forms, the systems, and some of the tools that will be used alongside of the BDA. We could move on to the next slide, please. Right. So here we have a high-level overview of the BDA lifecycle. So first, I think we've all mentioned this throughout this presentation. The member is going to complete and submit that reservation request form in order to receive their allocation of interest rate credit. Next, the member will access the CLP system and they'll utilize the BDA calculator to determine your estimated maximum amount supported. We'll get into that BDA calculator in a few slides. Next, the member will make that qualified small business loan and submit the loan via the CLP system. Then the bank will review the application and the loan listing and approve those qualified loans. And then lastly, the member will go on and execute that advance prior to year end. We can move on. Right. So first, we've all mentioned the first step in this product is completing that reservation request form. Up on the screen, you will see a copy of that form. The form was made available this morning. You will either have a link to it in an email blast that went out. You can also find it on our website. All members that are interested in the BDA program, they must complete this form in order to receive their interest rate credit reservation. So the form doesn't have too many inputs. It has a few items for some member information, as well as the reservation amount being requested. The maximum amount of interest rate credits that you can reserve is $50,000. A member can reserve less if they wish, but you can reserve up to that $50,000 amount. The form must be fully completed and executed. Then once complete, you want to email that form over to CLPOps at FHLBNY. The email address is located at the bottom of that form. Once it's received by the bank, we'll review it internally, and then the member will receive an email with the status of their request. As Tom mentioned, this is a first come, first served process, so you want to get those in. If there are insufficient interest rate credits available, the member may be denied and placed on a wait list. So please go ahead and get those forms in. We could move on to the next slide. All right, so all members are now required to utilize our new CLP access in order to access the full suite of CLP programs. This includes the BDA. So if you have not done so already, you will be required to complete and submit a global authorization form in order to gain access. There are steps to enroll located on our website. So once you've been set up for access, you'll be able to log into the CLP system through our site. You'll see a login dropdown on the top right of your screen over here. You'll navigate down a few options to the CLP option, and then you'll be able to log in with your credentials, and this will include your multi-factor authentication. So the system itself allows you to submit your applications, view and monitor all of your submissions for the BDA, as well as all the other CLP products. We could move on to the next slide. All right, so once you've logged into the system, you are brought to this dashboard screen. So this screen provides you with a real-time view of your program and member caps and usage details. From this screen, you're also able to initiate an application as well as track the status of your application. So it's a little bit small here, but on this dashboard, you can see that there is a BDA line item, the second from the bottom there. You can see that this member has received an allocation of the $50,000. So they submitted that reservation request form. They've gotten their email confirmation, gotten access to the CLP system, and they can see it here. If you see under annual limit, you'll see that $50,000 amount. You can also see that the member has not utilized any of these credits through an advance because the remaining availability remains at $50,000. That's the last column on the right. As advances are taken, this amount will be reduced in real time. The other important item for BDA on this screen is the BDA calculator. A link to this is also located on that BDA line item all the way to the right-hand side in that blue link. We could move on to the next page. All right, so once you click on that BDA calculator, a pop-up will appear on the screen of the actual BDA calculator, which you'll see right now. The calculator is available for members to use in order to determine your estimated maximum amount supported by the available interest rate credit. So it's fairly simple to use. You'll put in your estimated advance issuance date, your estimated maturity date, your estimated rate, and then click calculate. So you can see there's some dummy information here, but just those 3 inputs, hit calculate. So based off of this, the member put in a 1-year advance, estimated rate of 0.42% based off of those parameters with their $50,000 allocation. The maximum advance supported was that $11.9 million. So this really allows you to kind of get in there, play around, see how much subsidy or how much of an advance that subsidy will support in order for you to go out and make those loans. So it is important to remember that this information really is just for estimation purposes. It is subject to further review and credit underwriting prior to that advance issuance, but this should help everyone get started and kind of know what size of a loan is available. The other thing to remember is that this calculator, it will not work until you have reserved your BDA funds and received the approval from the bank. So on the bottom left, there's a box that says interest subsidy available. That is your reservation amount. So if that is 0, your calculation will pop up and say that you can only support a $0 advance because you do not have any subsidy available. So again, make sure that you get those forms in there. Once approved, that dollar amount will be updated to your interest subsidy requested amount, and you'll be able to play around in this calculator. All right, next slide, please. So in summary, I think that you've heard this from everybody. Submit those reservation request forms. This will get you your allocation. Next, you'll want to go out and qualify your small business customers and make that business. In the meantime, ensure that you are enrolled in the CLP system. There are instructions on the website. If you haven't done so already, check that out. You'll need to fill out that new global authorization form to get you in there. Submit your qualified loans via the CLP system, and then execute that BDA advance prior to the end of the year.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. This webinar, we have a lot of interesting questions that we got. So Jennifer, hopefully you could answer some of them. But first off, one question, and it's been asked by a couple of folks, will the presentation become available? Yes, we're going to send the presentation out to all participants today, so you'll be getting that by tomorrow. We generally send it out within a day. Another good question, do loans to small businesses based outside of New York, do they qualify? So outside of the district, we do any loan made by a member to a qualified small business, whether they reside within our district or outside our district, that would qualify for this program. Only members can participate in this, and this is a benefit for members and for those members to help out the small businesses within their given footprint. So whether that resides in New York or New Jersey or USVI or Puerto Rico or not, that doesn't matter in this case. So Jen, one question says, do you have to close the loan prior to executing the advance?
Yes. So this works similarly to all of our other CLP advances. Some of the data points that you'll be inputting into that application via the CLP system, one of them will be the settlement date. So that loan needs to have closed in order for you to submit your application, and then in turn, it already would have had to have been closed in order for you to execute that advance.
Okay, and then follow-up question. They could obviously, members can obviously make reservations prior to closing the loan. So you could reserve your allocation now in anticipation of marketing this and getting the funds out the door at an advantageous rate. Is that correct, Jen?
Exactly. So we would recommend that you fill out those forms as soon as possible. That way you can reserve and have that hold in that $50,000 amount. And then you're able to go out and generate your business. So the first step in this wouldn't really be going and making these lower interest rate loans to all of all of the customers that you work with. Really, the first step for this program would be complete that reservation request, make sure that you do have access to that $50,000 before you go out and make this type of business.
Okay. All right, excellent. All right, so moving on to the next question. The origination date for the loan, that's the closing date, and it has to be done prior to year end. Is that correct?
Yes, the origination date needs to be prior to year end, but the hope would be that it would be a little bit before year end. So you would have to close your loan, then you would have to complete the application, submit it to the bank. The bank would have to do a review on the loans and give you approval that those loans have qualified, and then you would have to call up the bank and actually get that advance. So the hope is that you're not waiting until 12/31 in order to do this. But yes, the very, very last day possible would be 12/31. But the hope is that it'll be a few more days for the bank to actually review your application submission.
Okay, thanks. And can you talk a little bit about the 90-day look back? We have a couple of questions, or I have a question on that. Is there a 90-day look back or a 30-day look back? Say if you have volume of a loan that you've already booked, say last week or a month ago, and it met the criteria of a small business, and the rate was at 3%. Would that qualify? Well, what's the look back?
Yes, so it is a 90-day look-back period from that settlement date of the loan. So if you closed your loan a month ago and this program ends on 12/31, you'd have to do that 90-day calculation to still make sure that it's within that 90-day window. You need to execute your window, your loan with the bank within 90 days of the closing date of that loan that you submitted. So it's not submit your application within the 90 days, it's execute that advance with the bank within that 90 days. So if you're doing any brand new business, closing today forward, you will be in that 90-day period. You won't have to worry about it as this program ends on 12/31. But if you're looking back at any of your prior business, it's 90 days from that settlement date of that loan to when you execute the advance with the bank.
Okay, thank you. Another question came in. So say if a member books a small business loan today and qualifies for this program, but it gets prepaid a couple months down the line, that doesn't impact the advance, correct? I mean, the advance would not have to be prepaid as well. Is that correct? Oh, Adam's going to jump in on this. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in on that one, Adam. No, the advance would not need to be prepaid.
Okay, very good. All right, so yeah, we still have some good questions. Hold on. One question was, would PPP loans qualify for this program? I guess it would if it was booked within 90 days of the advance execution. So the not 90 days from today, it's 90 days from when you execute that advance. So if it meets the parameters, I know the PPP loans are low rate loans. If it meets the parameters, that would meet the qualification for the program. Another question is that what if I don't use my whole allocation? What happens to the remaining allocation? Or can that would just go back into the pool? Jen?
So if you reserved your $50,000 and didn't utilize all of it, that available funds for your interest rate credits kind of sit with you to the end of the program. If you know that you're not going to be using them, we can cancel the remaining credits, and that will go back into the pool. And then should any members have been placed on that wait list, any of those available funds will be made available. But we won't just kind of take them away from you blindsided. We'll have a conversation and make sure that you aren't going to use them, or you'll request to take them back. But yes, they will go into the pool, but there'll be a conversation. They won't just be taken away from you.
Okay, and this is Adam again. But how Jen responded is 100% accurate. I just want to double down on it by saying our experience with the Small Business Recovery Grant Program was quite similar, where there were some members that had an allocation, and they just were not able to get more of the grant to the small business, but we were communicating with them on a very regular basis, and they knew that there was a waiting list. And it's obviously really important that we get the funds into the communities that really need it. So members have been really good about saying, look, I'm just not going to make it. I know I have some more time, but go to the wait list. And we really appreciate that, because if the time comes and the funds are not out the door, then that's it. The program's closed, and we'll revisit it in the future. So we'd rather have it all dispersed within our district, more so than waiting for the possibility of it going out.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Another question: Are there any restrictions on loan types? Real estate, equipment, etc.?
No, as long as it qualifies with that small business, it will qualify.
All right, thank you. Another question is, what's the likelihood of this program being offered in 2022?
I'll take that one.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Adam.
Sure. As I mentioned when we started the webinar, we figure out what the income of the bank, the projected income of the bank is going to be based on a variety of factors, and we kind of ring fence the activities that we want to do as a percentage of that income, making sure we don't jeopardize any of the other pursuits of the bank, building of retained earnings and paying out dividends and the bills required. So we are actually going through that process right now, as I'm sure many of you are, in budget season and planning for next year. So we will know the answer to that question shortly. And then once we get that allotment, what management will do at the bank, we'll figure out, based on the district needs, what is the most effective way to set up a diverse economic stimulus package for the year. Based on how this one goes, because this is our inaugural launch of the BDA, we hope that it's wildly successful and will be a tool that we use in the future. But to directly answer the question from whomever submitted it, is we don't know right now as we sit here. We are very transparent. The president sends out a monthly letter to our members every month, and the calling officers are in very close contact with you folks. So we will let you know as soon as we know, and that should be very shortly. And it will be derived based on how this round goes.
Okay. Oh, well, one question, and I want to hammer this home. It says how the small business will be notified about this program. This does not have to fall with. We're just using the Small Business Association's definition of what a small business is. This program is outside any kind of small business association lending. So we have no link other than the qualification component to the Small Business Association and an SBA loan. So many members have had that question. This does not have to be an SBA loan. It could be, but it absolutely does not have to be. And then lastly, can a member prepay the advance? The program is not designed to have members prepay the advance. However, in the event that would be necessary, we would work with the member. The advance, like I had mentioned before, when you factor in the dividend income from the requisite capital stock, it's a negative rate advance. So we're basically paying the member to take the advance. So there's really no cost. But we understand if there's an issue, if it's impinging on your capital, if you have to shrink your balance sheet, we'll work with the member on that. But we don't anticipate any members prepaying a negative advance. But should that circumstance arise, we'll work with you. So I don't have any. that wraps up the questions, Jennifer. I appreciate your help and your guidance on this program for our members. We'll be sending, like I had mentioned, we're going to be sending out the presentation. If you have any additional questions, please reach out by email or contact your relationship manager, and then we'll be happy to either set up a follow-up meeting with you or just answer questions as they arise. So get your documents in now. Like we had mentioned earlier, reservations are coming in. We anticipate that the program is going to be very well utilized from our members. So we would recommend that you be expeditious in order to capitalize on this opportunity. So thank you for attending, everybody. We really appreciate it, and let us know if we can be of any additional help. And Jennifer, thanks for your presentation as well. It was great, and thank you, Adam. So have a great day, everyone.